All right, thanks everybody for joining this morning, this afternoon, I guess, depending on where you're at. My name is Chris Giovinazzo. I'm a managing director and a principal at Accelerate Retirement. I'm joined by Fred Greenstein. He is the CEO of Blue Ocean Strategies. Fred and I today wanted to bring some ideas to the table to the advisors on the webinar as far as practice management is concerned, and really how to maximize your potential. And really, I guess the way to define that is to say that, how do you continue growth while really streamlining, the service side of your practice, and particularly the components that tend to bog down advisors, be time consuming, be things that we find otherwise might be best outsourced or delegated to, an organization like ours. And for those of you who don't know who Accelerate Retirement is, in a nutshell, we're a group of independent advisors, right? So, the affiliate model, so to speak, where everybody owns their own practice. They own their own P&L and revenue streams. And they basically joined our RIA to subscribe to essentially a host of different services. In a nutshell, that includes the RPAG platform, Retirement Plan Advisory Group. So that's kind of our technology chassis, right? And all the practice management and services and deliverables that go along with that, along with the infrastructure that our RIA can provide, a brand, a marketing platform, a host of things that, again, kind of make advisors successful from a day-to-day perspective, in that we take a lot of that responsibility off their plate. So when we look at kind of the evolution of the retirement plan, advisory offering, if you will, there's a lot of different things to think about. And all we hear about day to day is, consolidation, right? We hear it on the record keeping side. And that's how I cut my teeth in the business. I spent almost 7 years at Transamerica wholesaling advisors, which frankly ultimately led me to becoming one, which is to say that I saw that there was such a gap in, number one, the advisors that I called on. It seemed like they really didn't understand retirement plans, absent of the specialists, right? And there are those firms out there, but it seemed like the $2 million plan with 50 participants was underserviced. The advisor perhaps was more focused on other avenues of their business, personal wealth, insurance, et cetera. And that's ultimately what led me to become an advisor. And so I've been on the advisory side now for almost 5 years. I have roughly 70 retirement plan clients that I service on a day-to-day basis. And that's predominantly my focus, as well as growing the Accelerate Retirement brand. And collectively, we've been able to do that by bringing in, we're north of about 15 or so advisors across the country. And what we stand to gain is a collaborative network. And that's something that I think all the folks would attest to that are already part of the group. So again, kind of going back to the landscape of advisory firms, scale is important, right? Scale is important from a number of different facets. It's important because it allows advisors to delegate to a back office, right? Things that might otherwise you'd have to be in charge of, like accounting and compensation, invoicing, investment due diligence. And there's a number of different things listed here, right? So it's the ability to rely on kind of a back office, so to speak, to take a lot of these responsibilities off your plate. And we'll get more into that here in a bit. But one of the things that I think Fred's going to share is just sort of, and again, he's agnostic, right? He works with all the different advisors and he sees it all. I think one of the things he's going to share is kind of how to streamline your practice and how to really remove some of those obstacles. So with that, I'll briefly just kind of wanted to show this slide, which is to say, where are you spending your time? And the green is really revenue generating activities, right? Marketing, sales, networking, centers of influence, et cetera. And the red are kind of those things that obviously service is important. If you're not servicing your clients, you're not going to have good retention. You're not going to get paid. But you look at the other facets within operations specifically, these are areas, and the bold for me are the ones that stood out the most because they're the ones that frankly bog me down from a day-to-day perspective. And so having the ability to work with an organization and an RIA that really allows you to not worry about these things is how you can focus your time in the green in growing your practice. So with that, I'll turn it over to Fred to kind of discuss the challenges that he sees retirement plan advisors faces and go into his presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. And I'm going to add on to a lot of the things that you just said. So I talk to independent retirement plan advisors every day, and I have for about the past 20 years. And a lot of the things that I hear that they're facing are fee compression, of course, which equals profitability compression and driving this need to build scale, to do more with less. There's just not enough hours in the day. Advisors, especially those who are business owners, are going in way too many different directions, as Chris just reflected. And the industry is consolidating. And I'm talking about the 401k advisor industry in particular, where the lion's share of the plans are now being served and supported by fewer, larger firms. We're seeing an increase of competition for plan participants with the merging of wealth and retirement plan practices. And what it's resulting in is a lot of the smaller independent advisory firms being gobbled up by the aggregators. We're also seeing rapid advances in data aggregation and use of artificial intelligence and social marketing, which are changing the way that we as advisors have been doing business. And every firm that I talk to has staffing challenges, is hiring, training, retaining strong service and operations team is always time consuming and not the best use of their time. So a few suggestions. The first is to really think long term. I think many advisors get focused on in their business rather than working on their business. And they focus on this year's net revenue without focusing on the ultimate selling value of their business. So important to focus on both. And as Wayne Gretzky would say, skate to where the puck is going. And think about what the industry and your clients are going to look like a few years down the road, and be structuring your business and pointing your efforts toward where the puck is going. And, specifically focus your efforts where you add the most value. I would echo what Chris said, but I would narrow it further that I believe the most valuable time for advisors is time spent talking with clients, talking with prospects, and talking with centers of influence. Everything else is a distraction. It may be a necessary distraction of running the business, but to the extent that it can be delegated, outsourced, automated, you got to do it. And don't reinvent the wheel. Small independent firms can gain scale quickly just by finding the right strategic partners. Which may be RPAG, maybe Accelerate, maybe someone else. And I would encourage you to stay open to new possibilities. What led to success in the past won't lead to growth in the future. And as I like to say, just in closing, the name of my company is Blue Ocean Strategies. Many of you are familiar with the book. Blue Ocean Strategies involve reimagining the future of your business. So thank you for joining us today, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end.
Thanks, Fred. So kind of echoing what Fred said, what does your business look like? And I know it from the lens of myself. I know it from the lens of how 401k advisors grew up to, from nothing, from 3 people to now NFP Retirement, which is, $180 billion RIA, right? So I've seen the progression, and one of the things that I've learned over time is where advisors spend their time, and it seems like this kind of is the prototypical model. It's service, it's operations, when perhaps it should be more like it's marketing and sales and growth versus those other 2 slivers. And that's not to say that we don't want to spend time with our clients in terms of the day to day. It's really a matter of how do we streamline that process. And what I did in this presentation was I extracted out, for me, the things that I find advisors get hung up on most. How much time are you spending scheduling meetings? Are you doing that, or is someone doing that on your behalf? Calendar management is time consuming. how much time are you spending running investment reviews, doing RFPs, all those reports, right? I have 70 retirement plan clients. If I was running my own investment reviews, let's say I meet with the average client twice a year and I do an RFP or a fee benchmark, annually and an RFP every 3 years, that's hours. And you can spreadsheet it. We've done that in terms of by client, what is your time spent just on report running alone? Those are things that you shouldn't be focusing your time on and having then the ability. You really have two choices, right? Aside from doing it yourself, it's to hire somebody and train them, right? And go through all the management of that, or it's to delegate and outsource it to a partner where obviously there's going to be a fee associated with it, but you're not having to spend the time with managing that person and it's all done for you. So that for me is what enabled me personally to get to my next step in my practice. I hit a plateau revenue wise and client wise where I just could not continue growing until I have that infrastructure in place. And that was part of the reason why Accelerate Retirement kind of started. The evolution of that was, we had this great thing with RPAG and the practice management, the software, the platform, the technology, but it's still, the onus is still on the advisor to push the button. So unless they have the staff and infrastructure to do that for them, they're the ones that ultimately have to take that great technology and create the inputs and outputs. Whereas with Accelerate Retirement, it's kind of that next step in the evolution. You can utilize our team to do that for you. So again, and then kind of continuing that discussion, investment research and due diligence that's a doozy right there. And I get it. We all want to be heavily involved in the investment due diligence process. But the reality is, and Fred alluded to this earlier, and I love his insight, the large aggregators, they have teams of CFAs, they have teams of analysts that do that for you. So for me, I sat on a call the other day. I got a 30-minute insight into our Q4 market review for the close of 2022. I took notes. I didn't spend 1 minute doing research on anything market related because that report was provided for me. The notes were provided for me. I can take that now and deliver that to all my clients. I don't have to reach out to T. Rowe Price, and I'm sorry to pick on T. Rowe Price, but why their blue chip growth fund is scoring a 3 in our system. That commentary is provided for me. I can now put that in our meeting minutes. I can substantiate whether we're watch listing it or removing it or whatever the case may be. And I didn't spend 1 minute reaching out to the T. Rowe Price to do that research because our team has. And then the last piece I'll say too is on the investment side is collective investment trusts. And I don't know, some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may be using it already, but the suite of CITs that the larger firms benefit from is a competitive advantage. I would say in most cases in winning a new client, that is a big component of that. The ability to walk in and say, oh, you've got this great Putnam large cap value fund that, your R6 share class is, say, I don't know what it is, 60 basis points. You can look it up, 66 basis points. Our version is 0.29. It's 29 basis points. We're going to save you 55% investment management expenses just because that's what our organization has to offer and what our investment team has done by virtue of their collective bargaining power and all the research that goes into it. I didn't have to spend 1 minute talking to Putnam to be able to get that share class. So Fred, I would be curious where, on the investment side, particularly, what are you seeing out there? Where, give us your thoughts.
Yeah. My thoughts are that you are responsible for delivering excellent analysis, resources, service to your clients, not doing it yourself. And a lot of advisors who get stuck spending time doing investment analysis because that's where they think they add the most value are wasting time, and because there are resources available now and CFA teams to do it for you. So that's not. I think you doing it yourself is not what your clients value.
Agreed. And are you seeing, Fred, do you think that this is a component of the successful larger aggregators? Do you see this as a differentiator? Meaning if you're with one of those larger qualified plan, aggregators versus, let's say you're an advisor as part of a smaller firm that may not have that scale. Do you see that as a unique differentiator? Do you think plan sponsors understand that, or, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't think that's a huge differentiator for the aggregators because there are services like RPAG available, which make it possible for the small firm on the investment analysis side to compete very effectively. Accelerate takes it to the next step in helping to deliver that area of service to the client, but RPAG has the technology, has the analytics to support a small firm in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. And then I would say the kind of expanding on that too, something as simple as like meeting minutes, right? I mean, after every meeting, you're going to want to provide meeting minutes to your clients. How do you do so in a meaningful way that doesn't require you to spend 45 minutes putting together a report with your own custom commentary and thoughts? Obviously, you're going to take notes down during the meeting and then extrapolate that into your reporting. But we've figured out a way to streamline that. We can get auto populate commentary per fund. That way, you're not having to do that manual work and research, which is again saving you time and energy. So if the typical advisor could normally maybe manage, say, 50 plans on their own with 0 support staff, we've taken it to a point where advisors can manage 100, a lot of plans because we've cut down on the time that's required on the service side. Fielding participant inquiries is another one. I don't know about you, but I seem to get, particularly when it comes to questions that can be fielded by the provider, right? We want to be kind of that frontline service. I get calls, probably got 15 last week. I need a distribution. I need a rollover form, right? These are things where the plan sponsor perceives us as that go-to contact, when in reality, I think we all know they should probably be calling the provider directly. But that's something where we can field those calls and inquiries for you and respond to them and say, hey, this is probably your best contact. Please contact so-and-so provider. Here's our number. Or we'll get on the phone with you and help walk you through that process. If you're doing that yourself, that's something you should be delegating to an 800 number and a back office. Managing technology is another big one. I think people undervalue the time it takes to manage things like email and websites and marketing machines, right? I see, all different kinds of mechanisms for delivery as far as, making sure that your clients are informed with your newsletters and memos, which is the next one, right? Just having a mechanism to deliver that to your clients is time consuming. And as well as, there's a financial spend. And then again, the ongoing, kind of parlaying that into the ongoing client communication, newsletters, memos, webinars. Every time I talk to an advisor, particularly one that's with a broker dealer or an RA that doesn't understand retirement plans, it seems like it takes a lot of energy and effort to be able to create these materials and then get approval for them and go through that process. It's a nightmare, right? So to have the ability to have a turnkey solution where you have a whole suite of ongoing client communications and marketing pieces that you can use at your disposal. And again, everyone's different, right? I mean, you might not need some of the things we have, and there's a lot to offer, but the point here is that it's already been compliance approved. It's ready to go. I've yet to see where someone asked for a marketing piece that we don't have in limited circumstances. Go ahead, Fred.
I was going to say too, Chris, that not only is it important to make best use of your time and hand off the things that somebody else can do, but by focusing on the consulting, this is what gives most advisors their juice. I mean, this is what they're in the game for. They don't want to be spending time developing marketing materials and newsletters and implementing technology. They want to be consulting and out there trying to win new business, not just working in the back office.
Yeah, great point there. And then I think so. In summary, again, these are kind of, for me, the things that stand out. Going back to the slide earlier, where there's a whole list of kind of operational and service aspects. There may be other, aspects of your practice that you get bogged down to. And in my discussions with advisors, everybody's practice is unique. Everybody has different challenges. So there's always, ways for us to be able to kind of streamline that part of an advisor's practice, whatever the pain points.
I mean, there is a difficulty with letting go. I find that some advisors have trouble letting go. They think they can do it best, and maybe they can, but it's just like a lot of advisory practices that the name of the practice is the last name of the advisor. Well, and they're spending a lot of time building that brand, but maybe that's not the best use of their time either, or the most strategic avenue. But it's because there's a reluctance to let it go. And so, again, I would say open yourself up to new possibilities. Don't do it the way you have been doing it, or consider making changes.
That's a great point, Fred, and something I probably undervalued when I started as an advisor. If you were to walk into a prospect meeting, or let's just even say you make it to a finals presentation and you're one of 3 advisors and advisory firms, right? Do you think that there's an advantage of, when that prospect goes to do some research on you, which inevitably they're going to go to your social media, they're going to go to your LinkedIn, they're going to probably go to your website. Do you think there's value in seeing kind of scale or establishment as far as a brand goes? Or do you think that that's a disadvantage and that just seeing one face on a website is kind of, hey, we're buying this boutique advisor and buying into that, into that philosophy or model? What are your thoughts there?
I think in the past, it was more of a, it's still a relationship business, but it was more of a relationship business, and it was more about the individual advisor. And now it's more about the solutions, and doing it at low cost, and bringing holistic service to the clients, whether it be the participants or the plan sponsors. So I think that your website and everything showing that you have scale and capacity is important, especially if you want to attract and retain the larger and more profitable plans.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that kind of goes into the last intangible piece is the environment you're part of, right? I think this is something that I, again, undervalued when I became an advisor. Is I was kind of on an island, right? I mean, I had an RIA, I had a practice management platform, I had an arm's length folks that helped support me, but I didn't really have an ecosystem that allowed me to foster ideas and bounce, whatever the case may be, team calls, team meetings, et cetera. And I think this is something that for the folks at least that are part of the organization now, I think everybody benefits from. Hey, what are you doing on this? What are your thoughts on this? How do you handle, does anyone have, right? And to be able to just share ideas, because I was talking to a prospective advisor the other day who's part of a very large BD, and she met with kind of the retirement specialist within this BD, and she's basically said, and she's very knowledgeable and obviously really good at what she does. And she kind of was saying, and not in a demeaning way, like, I didn't get anything out of meeting with my peers. Like they're not at where I'm at in terms of kind of my retirement plan expertise. And so this is sort of kind of the specialist model, if you will, where you do have the ability to kind of gain from the folks around you. And you're not on an island, right? You're part of a team that everybody's business model is similar. And I will tell you, there are some advisors where we said, hey, look, this maybe isn't a good fit. You're doing 95% wealth management, and most of that is annuities. And that's probably not, within our bailiwick. Our typical advisor has probably between 60 to 80% of their revenue is qualified plans. And then the other, anywhere from 0 to call it 20 or 30 is wealth management. And we certainly have a pretty robust wealth management platform, but that's certainly not the focus either of most of our advisory practices. So everybody's kind of in alignment there, and it allows for definitely a unified experience. And I think everybody stands to gain from being in an ecosystem like that. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah. Something that you didn't mention, Chris, is compliance. And a lot of independent firms have their own independent RIA. And I wonder why, especially if they're a firm that has revenue, let's say less than $2 million annually, why they don't outsource that responsibility, that accountability, that liability. Again, it's generally not their top skill set. And it's the letting go of the independent RIA and joining a larger organization. I think is often a way to help improve the efficiency of your practice.
I think that's a great point, and something that I probably don't even give a lot of attention or even thought to, because it's not something I deal with day to day, right? I have somebody that sends out my Form 8EV on an annual basis to my clients, and I hear from compliance every now and then just to check in or whatever the case may be. I need to add something to my portal to say that I have an OBA or whatever the case may be, but I don't really, it's very passive in that lane. So to your point, and that's such a frustration. I've been part of organizations, particularly when I was with the platform side, the red tape with compliance was a frustration and a headache. And so I think that's another pain point that we can alleviate. Some of these larger organizations is that's not an issue. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think we're wrapping up here. I know we allotted 60 minutes, but we wanted to keep to the 30 minutes. So Fred, do you have anything in closing before we part?
No, just nothing in particular other than I think it's a good time to be in the industry. I want to honor everybody on this call for what you do in your business life, because you are changing the lives of the people in the plans that you serve. You're helping those folks to a more peace of mind in retirement. And retirement plan advisors don't get a lot of acknowledgement and thank you. So I just want to take this opportunity to say that.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. We have certainly a lot more information that we can get into. So what I'd say is if you're interested in kind of learning more, taking a deeper dive, reach out to Fred. Fred's going to obviously be more agnostic. He's going to explain to you kind of what's out there as far as the environment. And there are other options like Accelerate that are good. If you're looking to get kind of more detailed information on perhaps a retirement plan advisory group and the technology and the platform, or Accelerate Retirement, reach out to me and we'll make sure that we'll put you in touch with the right folks. So appreciate everybody's time. I know y'all are busy. I've got my own client meetings today as well. So thank you for joining, and we look forward to hopefully speaking with you at some point. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Bye now.